Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and welcome back to this next video. And in this particular video we are going to dive deep into the fascinating world of the cell biology, and we are going to see the differences between the apoptosis and the necrosis. So what set these two processes apart? Let us see some of the major differences between the apoptosis and the necrosis. So the first thing is, when you talk about the mechanism, the apoptosis is a programmed cell death, while the necrosis is an uncontrolled cell death. What I mean by that is that in the process of the apoptosis, the cells that are not normally functioning, they are removed from the body in a programmed manner, while in case of the necrosis, there is a chaos. For example, if this is a cell and if it goes through the process of the apoptosis, you can see that this particular cell is going in a very programmed manner to be removed from the body without affecting the surrounding tissue. If the same cell, if it goes through the process of the necrosis, you can see the chaos over here. It is spilling everything around and it is going to damage the surrounding tissue. So this is one of the major differences between the apoptosis and the necrosis. The second important difference is that when you talk about the apoptosis, there is cell shrinkage, and you do not see any cell shrinkage in the process of the necrosis. For example, if this is a cell going through the process of the necrosis, you can actually see the shrinkage of the cell until this particular cell is converted into these beautiful apoptotic bodies, which are removed by the process of the phagocytosis from the body. So the cell is removed and it is not going to affect the surrounding tissue. When you talk about a cell going through the process of the necrosis, as you can see over here, you do not see any kind of the cell shrinkage. It just bursts up and it spills everything around, affecting the surrounding tissue. Another important difference between the two is, as you have seen in the last image, that in the process of the apoptosis, the cell membrane that is intact until the late stages, and in the process of the necrosis, that is disrupted very early, because in the process of the apoptosis, you see the cell shrinkage. In the process of the necrosis, that is absent. Another important difference between the two is that in the apoptosis, you do not see the inflammation, that is minimal or absent, but in the process of the necrosis, it often triggers inflammation. So if I define the inflammation in simple terms, this is the body's immune response to the pathogens, to the irritation or any kind of the tissue damage. So if you look at this particular image, this is showing you the inflammation, and the major symptoms of the inflammation that include the redness, the heat, the pain, and the swelling. What that means is that if your immune system is getting activated, that means the things that are not normal. So when there is no inflammation in the process of the apoptosis, that means you are going through a normal process. If you see inflammation in the process of the necrosis, that means there is something wrong. The process is not normal. Another important difference between the two is that the apoptosis, there are energy requirements in the form of the ATP, while in the necrosis, you do not require ATP. Now, why we require ATP in the process of the apoptosis? It can be needed for a variety of the reasons. For example, the ATP, they are required for the activation of enzymes. Caspases would be one of the examples that require ATP for its activation during the process of the apoptosis. Secondly, there is cytoskeletal rearrangement. For example, if you look at this particular cell, these green ones, they are the mitochondrial. You have got the actin filaments over here. You have got the intermediate filaments. And if you see over here, the cytoskeleton that is very much rearranged during the process of the apoptosis. If you look at this cytoskeleton, of course, this is totally different than this particular cytoskeleton, which is going through the process of the apoptosis. So, for the cytoskeleton rearrangement, as you are dealing with the proteins like the mitotubules, the actin filaments, the intermediate filaments, of course, if you are rearranging them, you need energy, and that is in the form of the ATP. Thirdly, there is membrane blebbing in the process of the apoptosis, and that particular membrane blebbing requires energy in the form of the ATP. Let me simply define the blebbing for you. If this is a pro-apoptotic cell, this is going through the process of the apoptosis, you can see these membrane blebs over here. What this membrane blebs mean, that an irregular bulge in the plasma membrane, you can see these irregular bulges in the plasma membrane, that is caused by localized decoupling of the cytoskeleton from the plasma membrane. So when you are going for the cytoskeletal rearrangement, the plasma membrane, they are going to make these membrane blebs, and that requires energy, and that is provided in the form of the ATP. Fourthly, there is maintenance of the ion gradients. So for a normal apoptotic process, you need to maintain the ion gradients, and for that you require energy in the form of the ATP. The last one, that is the DNA fragmentation, because if you are going for the fragmentation of the DNA, you need the activation of the endonucleases. So those are proteins, and for their activation you need ATP. So in the process of the apoptosis, you require ATP because you are doing everything in a programmed manner. Of course, you are doing nothing in a programmed manner in the process of the necrosis, so you do not require any ATP during the process of the necrosis. Another important difference between the two is that there is nuclear fragmentation in the apoptosis. As you have just seen over here, the membranes, they are going to break down. The DNA, that is going to be broken down. So there is nuclear fragmentation in the process of the apoptosis because you are doing things in a controlled way. No nuclear fragmentation is present in the process of the necrosis because that cell just go through the process of the chaos. Another important process is that apoptosis is a highly genetically regulated process. So you are going for the transcription of those particular genes which are needed for the process of the apoptosis, and they are only activated when there is a signal for the apoptosis. So you are genetically regulating the process of the apoptosis, and of course there is no genetic regulation in the process of the necrosis because that is the uncontrolled cell death. Another important difference and the major difference between the two is that apoptosis is a physiological process. That is the need of the body, because if there are problems in the process of the apoptosis, that can lead to a variety of the pathological condition. The necrosis, of course, this is directly a pathological process. You do not want the cell death, but the conditions in the necrosis, they are making the cell to die. So that is not a physiological process, that is a pathological process. If you get this one, if you are going through the process of the apoptosis, your body, your cell, they are very much happy, they are flying in the air. And when you talk about the necrosis, you do not like the process of the necrosis because that is a pathological process. So if I give you the differences between the two in a single sentence, the apoptosis and the necrosis, they both involve the cell death. In the apoptosis, the cell go to death. In the process of the necrosis, it go to death, but they are is different as night and day from each other. So these are the major differences between the apoptosis and the necrosis. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell. If you have any question, you can ask me in the comment section, and do share it with your friends. I'll see you in the next video.